Hi, I'm Fiona. I'm a trustee and volunteer with Unite Carers in Mid-Devon and an ambassador for carers. I would like to tell you a story about Ted and Susie. They decided to move from the farm where they lived and where they had so many responsibilities and worries. They wanted to retire, relax and enjoy hobbies and holidays. What should have been an exciting time became a stressful time. Ted knew that something was not quite right within himself. He felt anxious, muddled, angry. People thought he was being difficult, awkward and cantankerous. He thought it was the stress of selling the farm and of making an enormous life change. He had lived at the farm for more than 50 years. At last Susie convinced him to see his GP, who diagnosed mild cognitive impairment and depression. They moved into a lovely house with friendly neighbours, closer to the shops, doctors, dentists and friends. The house was big enough for family to visit, and it all should have been so much better, but Ted missed the farm. He had always lived on a farm. He liked chatting to the neighbours and people who walked by with their dogs, especially if it was a collie. But he couldn't get used to the house. There seemed to be too many doors. He became more anxious and depressed as he struggled to keep up with the changes and to make sense of everything. He was diagnosed with vascular dementia, although Susie made little of this, maintaining he was just being awkward. She did not tell his family of his diagnosis, and Ted forgot. Susie tried to support him when he was muddled or being difficult, but gradually her impatience increased. He was under her feet all the time, and he didn't want to do anything. He wouldn't make any decisions. She was always telling him to get on with it or man up and face things. She was fed up with his repeated stories of the past and of people she did not know or had no interest in. Susie felt cheated. Her vision of a relaxed, contented retirement, spending time away with friends, strolling hand in hand with Ted on the beach at sunset, was disintegrating. He didn't want to go for walks with her. He didn't want to go on day trips. He kept going back to the people and places of his youth. He went on and on about the farm where he grew up, his family and his old friends. But she didn't want to know about that. She wanted now, friends now, to do things now, today, to have fun and to laugh. Ted avoided going out because he was anxious, afraid, lost, but he couldn't understand this. He couldn't put it into words. He didn't know their friends, and when they met, he was overwhelmed by the conversation, by their questions, and he got angry. Susie was embarrassed and humiliated by his apparent rude and bad behaviour. She lost control of her pent-up anger and frustration and began to shout at him, shake him, do spiteful things because he was being so selfish, spoiling everything they had looked forward to. She wanted him to drive when they went out, but he was worried. He forgot the route or destination. He turned left when she said turn right. They had driven that road so often, he must know the way. She shouted, telling him he was stupid. He became frightened, not only of what was happening to him, but afraid of her anger and increasing violence. He was a proud man. How could he discuss what was happening with anyone? He didn't understand it himself. He had done something wrong. He couldn't remember what, but Susie was livid. She shouted at him, pinned him against the wall, took his arms and shook him, digging her nails into his skin and screaming words into his face. He felt bewildered and scared. His stomach knotted, his heart beat faster and faster. His throat was dry. As soon as he could get away from her, he opened the door, escaping to his car and driving to the supermarket car park where he went every day to buy his newspaper. He sat still. What should he do? Where was he? There seemed nothing familiar nearby. He began to cry. What What was wrong with him? He never cried. He looked at his mobile phone and pressed a button. His son-in-law Angus answered. He reassured Ted and told him not to worry. He was working nearby and would come to see Ted. Just wait there. Angus sat with Ted in the car and they discussed the weather and Angus's work. They decided it would be nice for Ted to have a mini holiday in Devon with Angus and his wife. So Ted followed Angus's car back home and they went in to see Susie. She was furious and threw some clothes and wash things into an overnight bag. "And don't bother coming back," she shrieked as she slammed the door after them. Like a child clutching his familiar teddy bear, Ted cradled a China Thelwell pony in his rough, calloused farmer's hands on the journey to Devon. "It was Dad's," he explained sadly, "and I didn't want her to smash it." A respected farmer, hard-working all his life, strong, responsible, gregarious, kind and loving, he had become a weak and frightened lost soul. Eventually, Ted went to live with his daughter and her husband. Their sons and partners were frequent visitors, along with their collie dogs, which Ted loved. No one asked him questions. They laughed at his stories about the farm, his collie dogs, and old grey Fergie tractor. He enjoyed helping in the garden, and they worked together on the family history and were interested in his photos and his stories. He went to day club once a week just to help out, moving tables and chairs, setting out the activities, and where numbers were involved, it was always Ted who did the mathematics. He laughed with his new friends. They were all a bit forgetful like him. He felt included with his family and the seemingly constant stream of visitors. He relaxed, laughed again, and his anxieties diminished. No one minded if he was a bit forgetful. If he wanted quiet time, he could nod off in the summer house or sit on the bench at the bottom of the garden, gazing at the fields beyond, dotted with grazing sheep and cattle. He and his daughter took short walks across the fields. The feel of the land beneath his feet, feeling the grass, the trees and the hedgerows, and the familiar scents and sounds nourished his soul. The countryside where he had spent his life was in the very blood which coursed his veins. The land spoke to him, he was part of it, and he understood it. He visited his son and two beautiful granddaughters. They went to the pub and listened to bands playing rock and roll music, even danced. Life became a joy, especially with the arrival of a great-grandson. Although dementia may have stolen from him, it also released him from worries and responsibilities. He felt that a huge burden had been lifted. He was fulfilled, loved, happy, and free to laugh. There are many reasons why people become carers. Ted was my father. I couldn't leave him in the situation he found himself, and rightly or wrongly, I brought him to live with us. 10 years ago, I knew nothing about dementia or about being a carer. I struggled so much. I didn't know where to go for help. I didn't know there was help. I have learned a great deal, and I want to use this knowledge and experience to help others. If Ted and Susie had received more support at the beginning and been referred to support groups, perhaps their situation may have ended differently. If I had known more about vascular dementia at the time, perhaps my father's catastrophic stroke would not have come as such a shock, with the resultant grief and the guilt of what if I had done something differently. Often carers and the people with the diagnosis are struggling with anticipatory grief and need support and advice, including guidance on end-of-life care and future planning. Peer support groups can be absolute lifesavers. I facilitate 2 groups and help at 3 others, and I see constantly the value of peer support, the warmth, the hand of friendship, the understanding, that common bond. We laugh, cry, share worries and concerns, and also the joys and the triumphs. I perceive a change in the wind. I have seen the dedication, enthusiasm and desire to improve things. There are so many advances in the medical world, public awareness and advice on living a healthy lifestyle to reduce the risk of dementia. With the introduction of the Devon Dementia Strategy, there is a role we can all play to make a difference to the lives of those with dementia and those who support them. Together we can support them to realise that while life may look different to what they had envisaged, it is still a life worth living. Having witnessed the passion and compassion shown in the production of the strategy, it is my sincere belief that the dementia pathway in Devon will be smoother and easier to navigate than previously, and that those treading the path will find the support, compassion and hope that is so desperately needed.